Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, June the 1st, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try and make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a family-friendly podcast. At least we try to be. And sometimes there may be things that might be shown that might be a little too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So for all those coming from the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, welcome. I know as a geek, I'm just happy that Amber Heard will no longer be a part of DC. But on to actual other news. Unfortunately, in Uvalde, Texas, they have began to say goodbye to loved ones in multiple funerals.
1 week ago, 19 families sent their children to school, and they never came home, leaving loved ones only memories. As community members, even actor Matthew McConaughey, whose hometown is Uvalde, come to pay their respects. Those close to the 21 killed can't help but think about those last moments as they prepare to lay their own to rest. The funeral for 10-year-old Maite Rodriguez is among the first. She's remembered by family as sweet, charismatic, and loving, as seen in this video with her cousin.
Her classmates said that she was brave, that she was grabbing all the other students and telling them where to hide before the gunman turned on her, but that she was so brave and courageous to tell the kids to hide.
A heartbroken community attending 5 services today, 2 funerals and 3 visitations for 4 children and 1 teacher among the 21 killed. As more details come to light, it's unclear at what point during the shooting this video was taken. The apparent radio call was videotaped by a man who told CNN he heard the dispatch from the radio of a Customs and Border Patrol vehicle outside the school.
Are you in there?
The radio traffic audio adding new concerns about what law enforcement knew during that hour they were still waiting to enter the classroom and before they killed the gunman. One off-duty Customs and Border Patrol agent ran to the school when he heard about shots fired.
The police were breaking out the windows on the outside, and the kids were jumping out through the window.
Officials say at least 2 children called 911 multiple times, begging police to come while the gunman was still inside their classroom.
The information's flowing in. Why doesn't DPS have that information? The sheriff's office, the federal guys, the local police? This is a failure at every level.
The Texas Department of Public Safety director says 1 child told the 911 operator 8 or 9 students were still alive. Audio from an unconfirmed source revealing at some point law enforcement was aware kids were inside the classroom.
At what point do people not use some common sense here? Listen to 911 calls that are coming in, understand that kids are still alive inside, and know that they have to go in there, do their jobs under the active shooter protocol.
One teacher who escaped the shooting says she wants the blame to focus on the gunman.
And I just hate that we have to look for blame to somebody else besides the person that actually did this to us.
But the families are now left with more questions than answers as they focus on the lives that are lost.
She isn't just...
And yeah, I mean, nobody above all else is looking forward to burying their own child. And fortunately, some families in Uvalde, Texas, as of today, will unfortunately be going through that. But with that being said, there has to be some answers. I mean, again, we covered this and still are covering it because Uvalde Police Department and the police chief are being very, very quiet about all this. Of course, they'll sit there and say, "Oh, an investigation. We can't comment on an ongoing investigation. You know, about why, but we do know that the incident commander gave the order not to go in, even though there have been other reports that other police officers have went in, got their kids, and got them out, while keeping parents from going in and doing the exact same thing, except one could say that they used their influence and status to basically pick above all else. While you still had people, good guys with guns, sitting outside of a door, while a gunman was inside with a shooting gallery for young children. That being said, the police commander was actually found, and of course, if you're expecting answers anytime soon, don't hold your breath.
Officials say Uvalde School District Police Chief Pedro Arredondo is not responding to requests for another interview in their investigation into the school shooting. He was, of course, the incident commander who made the call to hold off breaching the classroom where all 21 victims were killed.
It's a few minutes ago, CNN's Aaron Cooper said that he reached Arredondo, who said he had been in touch with the Texas Department of Public Safety. Shimon Prokupez, also in Uvalde. Shimon, I understand you got in contact with him as well. What did he say? Any news?
Well, Jim, just to give everyone the play-by-play here, just happened moments ago. You had Aaron Cooper, our producer out here, who was at his home, saw him leaving his home. So we went to the office where we assumed he was going. And sure enough, we were sitting in our car when he drove in. So we quickly ran out and confronted him, essentially, as he was going in through the back door of the school district office. And we asked him about the accusations from the director of the DPS, who says that he was the sole person who made the decision to not have officers breach that door. We also asked him questions about whether or not he's cooperating with the investigation. Take a listen to what he said.
How are y'all? So I want to talk to you about your decision and what the DPS director said.
How's it going?
Good, I'm Pete.
Nice to meet you.
I want to talk to you about the decision and what department we're doing, but just to let y'all know, and I just spoke with him. I know you did. But you're not blocking me, are you? No. Turn this way. No, just so you all know. Just so you all know, obviously, we're not going to release anything. We have people in our community being buried, so we're going to be respectful. I just want your reaction we're going to be the director McGraw saying that you were responsible for the decision. Right. We're going to go into that room. How do you explain yourself? We're going to be respectful to the family. I understand that, but you have an opportunity to explain yourself to the parents. And just so you know, we're going to do that eventually, obviously. When? And whenever this is done, let the families quit grieving, then we'll do that, obviously. And just so everybody knows, we've been in contact with DPS every day. Just so you all know. They say They say that you're not cooperating. I've been on the phone with them every day. But they say you're not cooperating. So just 2 seconds. Just so you know, we've been talking to them every day. What is your reaction? Y'all have a good day. What is your reaction, sir?
And Jim and Poppy, obviously, we gave him ample opportunity several times, asking him to address the accusations from the DPS about his involvement, about his decision making. He chose to dodge those questions. And as you can see, going inside his office, people came out to get him inside. We were the only ones there. We've been looking for him for days. For days, we've been looking for him. We've been reaching out to him, wanting him to respond to this community. People here very upset, obviously, over some of the decision making. And finally, my producer, Matt Friedman, and I, look, we went there. We wanted to ask him questions. He clearly is dodging some of the key questions in this, claiming that he's cooperating in this investigation. He claims he's going to address some of these questions at some point. We'll see. Look, there's still a lot of questions that he needs to answer, as well as law enforcement.
Yeah, a lot of questions. But he just seems so cavalier about it. I think that bothers me the most, is that, and feel free, because I think the same thing. It's like, he felt very cavalier about his answers. He's sitting there smiling and whatnot. It's like, I understand you got to be polite. You got to be polite as a public official. You got to be polite with complete strangers when talking to you. But you have, at this point, parents and possible spouses who are wanting to know why your decision process. Oh, well, when the family stopped grieving. No. How? Well, first and foremost, a parent will never stop grieving for a child. They'll never stop. They may come to some level of acceptance, but the grief never goes away. In the same sense that, losing a spouse is in the same category. But for him to sit there and be so cavalier and go, we're gonna wait till they stop grieving and give them answers, even though he himself is under scrutinization that he is not cooperating with the investigation. Oh, I've been on the phone with DPS every day. Really? But you've turned into the invisible man in your own hometown that you choose to serve. See, this is the thing that always kills me. That always kills me about when people talk about the good guy with a gun. The NRA says it all the time. The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. You had several of them outside of a school and none of them went in. The good guy with a gun theory is bullshit. But what's even more bullshit is when you have the incident commander, also known as the chief of police, is ducking and dodging like he's a celebrity trying to go out into a grocery store. And again, he's cavalier. He's protected. Well, all I can say at this point is they must be putting him through some serious media training in order to prepare himself for the bullshit that he's going to spill about the decisions he's made. Because yes, someone does have to answer for this, not just the gunman. I mean, the police response or lack thereof has to be answered for. And he is the man. He is the point of the spear. So yes, it's going to fall on him. And I don't feel bad that it falls on him. But it's upon him to actually turn around and do what needs to be done and give those families some answers. Speaking of answers, though, I've always said this because, again, when I have to deal with ammosexuals, I'm not talking responsible firearm owners. I am talking about ammosexuals. What I mean by that is they love guns to the point to where they should be on a list somewhere. You know, they think that every school shooting or every time a person is killed with a gun, they immediately think that their gun rights are going to get revoked. Those type of people. Well, it amazes me so because I've said it best that the U.S. currently is the only country in the world right now that has mass shootings. Everywhere else, they have put in laws and regulations that have actually ended mass shootings almost immediately. Even more so where Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau decided to implement another one.
School massacre. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is making a push to strengthen gun safety in his country, introducing new legislation that will implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. CNN's Bryn Gingras here with the latest on this. Bryn.
Yeah, John, I mean, a stunning proposal. And then, like you said, in response to what happened in Uvalde and Buffalo, Trudeau's proposal puts a freeze on handgun ownership in Canada by not making it possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in the country. Now, that includes finding gun smugglers and traffickers and helping law enforcement actually enforce and investigate those crimes. In addition, if this passes, it would be illegal for long guns to hold anything more than 5 rounds. Gun makers would actually be forced to make rifles that way, if you can believe that. The proposal would also bar anyone involved in acts of domestic violence or criminal harassment from owning a gun. Now, Trudeau did say, listen, he understands most gun owners use their guns safely, but there is no need for assault-style weapons in the country. This is an issue the Prime Minister campaigned on, and here's more of what he had to say about it.
As a government, as a society, we have a responsibility to act to prevent more tragedies. Canadians certainly don't need assault-style weapons that were designed to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time. Gun violence is a complex problem, but at the end of the day, the math is really quite simple. The fewer the guns in our communities, the safer everyone will be.
And this government has taken action against guns before. After the country's deadliest massacre in Nova Scotia 2 years ago, it banned 150 type of military-style assault weapons. Now, handguns make up about 59% of violent crimes that included a firearm over the last 10 years. This is just a proposal, but it has support, and it could be passed as early as this fall, John.
So again, I just wanted to point that out, that the last part that she said, the last time Canada had a mass shooting was in Nova Scotia almost 2 years ago. Immediately after that, they put in a ban on 150 type of varieties of military style weapons. 150 different varieties were banned, and we can't get one bill looked at, one bill passed. New Zealand, when they had their mass shooting, banned military style. New Zealand, PM, once they had their mass shooting, banned military style weapons, assault type weapons. Haven't had a mass shooting since. It's been almost 3 years. Yeah, 3 years since their mass shootings. Japan, the UK, EU, basically that entire area have some of the strictest gun laws and regulations and requirements in the entire world. 0 mass shootings. Again, I have to ask this question. Why in the world, do we still have mass shootings? Because America has a problem with guns. To the fact that we, above all else, just don't simply want to, how can I put this ever so nicely, do the right thing and regulate them properly. I've been saying it. I'm all for regulation, despite where the homosexuals say, right, bad guys don't pay attention to bad guys. It's almost programmable how they act. Whenever homosexuals are gun or really extreme gun lobbyists, always do the same thing. Bad guys don't follow the laws. The last mass shootings we ever had were all purchased legally. Bad guys had nothing to do with it. Oh, well, look at Chicago. That's Republicans hang on Chicago like they used to hang on Benghazi. Chicago has some of the strictest laws and their crime is still high, while ignoring the economical, societal impacts they are currently dealing with along with the corrupt law enforcement. They seem to forget that part. But the thing about it is, it always comes back to, why don't we try regulating the way we handle firearms better? Why is that so hard to do? Part of it is the GOP. I can't put it all on the GOP, but the GOP has taken their stance to the NRA because they're bought and paid for. Some Democrats are also bought and paid for by the NRA. Don't get it twisted. The NRA, and despite somehow still hanging on by a thread, still has the money to buy and pay for politicians. The GOP just has to be a bigger number than Democrats. But even so, speaking of the NRA, even after the mass shooting that happened in Uvalde, the NRA, as of last Friday, decided to still have their conference. And I was always curious about the NRA. Like, the fact of how people think, especially with the most recent shooting that we had in Texas, how people actually went to the NRA Expo, how they felt about changing gun laws. And I'm going to be honest, some of the answers are very surprising, and some of the answers, well, I expect them from Fox News.
After the school shooting and amid growing calls for gun reform, the NRA has opened its annual convention in Houston. Mounted police on patrol between the convention center and the massive crowd of protesters who gathered nearby. Several speakers and performers canceled appearances in the wake of the shooting, but former President Trump still chose to attend. ABC's Rachel Scott is there.
Tonight, nearly 300 miles from the scene of the Uvalde massacre, protesters descending on Houston as the National Rifle Association kicked off its annual meeting.
Why did you decide to come out? Because my daughter is a teacher and she had to learn how to pack bullet wounds in her classroom in order to teach. She's in a classroom and I fear for her life every day. Every day.
Inside the NRA convention, attendees say guns aren't the issue. Teresa Wakefield, a gun owner and grandmother of 13, says after Uvalde, lawmakers should reconsider the legal age to buy a gun.
Why should you be able to buy weapons at 18? It's heartbreaking. But guns don't kill people. People kill people. The guns didn't jump in the truck. The guns didn't run to the school. The guns didn't do it. That young boy did.
In the hours before the meeting began, several high-profile Republicans backing out of appearances. Texas Senator John Cornyn and Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Texas Governor Greg Abbott also not appearing in person, choosing instead to send a pre-recorded video message.
We're gathered today.
Still Texas Senator Ted Cruz taking the stage, and then headliner, former President Donald Trump.
The existence of evil in our world is not a reason to disarm law-abiding citizens who know how to use their weapon and can protect a lot of people. The existence of evil is one of the very best reasons to arm law-abiding citizens.
And back in Washington, the Senate does plan to hold a hearing addressing gun violence and children. As for those bipartisan talks on gun control legislation, well, Congress is out on recess, but that group does plan to speak by phone and by Zoom. Protesters here hope that they do not lose the urgency with.
Rachel Scott, our
So I have to ask this question because, again, that's just part one of it, where you literally and figuratively, again, it never ceases to amaze me. Well, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Okay, you are right. But we still need to control how people are able to get access to firearms they shouldn't have. It is, you know what was real funny about those NRA people? You can see the one in the one in the beginning, the older woman, the wheels in her head. She's like, but he's 18, so technically he's an adult, but he really should not have a. You can see you can literally see just fighting your own. Common sense is coming in, and then the Republican side's like, no, you will still say what we need you to say. And she was like, but he's 18, so he's an adult. But okay, let me explain something to you. I wish, above all else, yes, in 18 is seen as legal, and that's the word I think we need to really stick to. 18 as seen as legal in the United States. It doesn't make you an adult, not by any chance. Because you know why? Have you ever tried to rent a car when you're 18? Have you ever tried to get insurance when you're 18? Hell, you can't drink. You can go to war. You can go off to a war and go fight somebody else's war and kill and kill and be justified, but you can't go get a drink. So why are they hung up on this? That if he's 18, he can go buy a gun, which again is shocking to some people. It's like, wait a minute, that part right there. He's allowed to go out and go buy a gun, but he's not allowed to go out to the nearest convenience store and go pick up a 6-pack or a tall boy. And nobody's like, how are we not seeing there's a problem here? But again, alas, just wait for judgment, because we still got some more from the NRA Expo. Actually, from the same woman. I will call her Revolver Karen. Yes, we still got some more from Revolver Karen.
Any gun reform? I do. As far as, for example, the Uvalde, I do not believe that young man, yes, 18 is legal adult. You can go in the military. You can, fight for our country. That's okay. You can't buy alcohol. Why should you be able to buy weapons at 18?
What crossed your mind when you learned that 19 children, 2 teachers?
I was sitting at home crying. I was crying. It came on the news, and I just started crying. My heart felt for all these families, and it's heartbreaking. But guns don't kill people. People kill people.
The only reform that I would do is to try to keep guns away from people that have maybe psychological issues. They shouldn't be having guns in the first place. But as far as a reform, I don't think what the liberal Democrats are looking to do is the right thing. It is our right to have the ability to have a firearm. So I think what they're trying to do is a little much of an overkill. So being able to keep the guns away from people that may have some psychological issues is most of these events that you are seeing, if you look at their social media, they had some issues.
It's a tool. I work with dangerous tools all the time. I got nail guns, I've got hammers, I've got multiple chainsaws at home. I'm more scared of my chainsaw than any of my firearms. I make one little oops with a chainsaw, I'm, going to have trouble writing my name again. My firearms, NRA offers great training, went through Boy Scouts, all my kids went through Boy Scouts. We treat weapons properly. They're a tool, but they need to be treated with respect.
Polls show that the majority of Americans, 89%, support expanded background checks. Background checks for all gun sales.
I don't have a problem with, that's one thing I don't have a problem with. Look at somebody, if they're convict or they've, pedophile, whatever, have a history of violence. Darn right. I don't, by being a bad person, you've given up your right to a freedom. I'm okay with that.
So I just want to point this out. So you know what you heard, right? We look into the reason, and I love how people in the area are saying, "Well, the Democrats is overkill and all this stuff." Three people, right? One person, you shouldn't be able to buy guns at 18. Revolver Karen said that. Number two, guy in the male blue shirt that looks like he's trying to relive his college basketball days sat there and said that yes, if you have a history of mental illness or you are just mentally incompetent, you should not have access to a firearm. Okay, cool. Number three, the guy right there who has the Wyatt Earp guy who has the Wyatt Earp shirt on sat there and said yes, if you have a criminal record or if you're a pedophile or something of that nature, of course you shouldn't have access to a firearm. It amazes me that three people, should be 21 or over, have a history of mental illness, and if you are a convict or, a pedophile, as Wyatt Earp would say. It's amazing how these three separate individuals can consent to these types of gun reform laws, say it on camera at an NRA convention, and yet be against it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's confusion. That's the way the NRA likes it. The NRA likes it because, number one, they are freaking afraid. Afraid, mind you. And I say afraid. You know why I say afraid? Because gun reform may actually happen. Actually, the funny part is there was a study that was attempted a long time ago. History lesson, kids. Do you guys know about the Dickey Amendment? The Dickey Amendment. Yes. The Dickey Amendment is the sole reason today why the CDC will always have the issue of studying gun violence and America's mental state toward firearms. For all that don't know, here's your history lesson for the day.
38,000 people died from gun-related injuries in the United States in 2016, and there is very little research into why and what can be done to change it. For over 20 years, the U.S. government has purposely restricted funding for gun control research. That's because of a little-known obstacle, the so-called Dickey Amendment. In 1993, a study funded by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention created an uproar when researchers examined data and came to the following conclusion. Having a gun in the household made someone more likely to be a victim of homicide. In response, the National Rifle Association and Republican lawmakers tried to eliminate the arm of the CDC that had funded the study. That effort failed, but in 1996, Jay Dickey, a congressman from Arkansas who called himself the NRA's point man in Congress, succeeded on another front. He introduced a rider in the U.S. spending bill that would prevent the CDC from using any funds to advocate or promote gun control. After this became law, public funding for firearm studies dried up. That means there is a scarcity of research into the nature of gun deaths in the U.S., which in turn affects how to make policy around guns. After the massacre in Newtown in 2012, President Obama urged Congress to allocate $10 million to the CDC for research into gun violence. The money was never appropriated. In 2015, 110 Democratic members of Congress signed a letter calling on the government to remove the amendment. But in December of that year, Congress passed its spending bill for 2016. The Dickey Amendment was still in it.
Hello? Students go to high school. Shut up. Is they shut up?
Following the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, that killed 17 students and staff, some members of Congress sent a letter to Speaker Paul Ryan, urging him to repeal the amendment.
The motion to concur is agreed to.
The most recent budget package passed by Congress includes language stating that the CDC has the authority to conduct research on the causes of gun violence, but it leaves the Dickey Amendment untouched. Since the amendment remains in place, it will likely continue to have a chilling effect on the research conducted by the CDC.
Crazy, isn't it? The Dickey Amendment to this day is still, to this time, is still in there. And that is the proverbial GOP thorn that just until it's removed, they, above all else, will not go ahead and remove said roadblock. And I wonder why is that? Why is it that they will not remove the roadblock that honestly would help a lot as far as studies go? Because a study is needed. This is true. A study is needed because, again, it's just like a study on reparations. I see it all the time. Black people are due reparations for former ancestors. But how do you know you're? How do you know? How do you know if you're an ancestor? How do you know I'm not an ancestor? Which is usually what typically white people say anyway. But imagine if there was a study done on every Black person to trace their lineage back to their descendants. If we really did have the ability, which there was a project that was intended on doing that just to prove a point, was able to prove back that every Black person did descend from a slave, yes, we'd be due reparations. But they don't want that study to be done. Why? Because they don't want to admit America's one of its major dark plots in history, where one race enslaved another for a longer period of time than any other race on the planet. The point I'm making out of this is it's people who have a lot to lose will always be the ones that prevent things like a study from being pointed out, especially in the same sense where it benefits them. Say, like, for instance, if you go on Fox News, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm about to play this. I promise I'll try to be as brief as humanly possible. But Fox News, if you or you know somebody who's probably the older silver-haired male generation that still watches it, we'll probably watch the three-headed Hydra, preferably Laura Ingraham, who, and for her to be a former Supreme Court law clerk, who is not just talking about the police response, but praising the police, who's not trying to talk about why this young man was able to purchase a handgun, who will not talk about any of those things. But you know what she will talk about? A reason why, aside from this person wanting to just be violent and have tendencies that could have been caught, you know what she's going to talk about? Weed. The dangers of marijuana. I wish I could make this up.
People are hearing a lot about AR-15s and background checks, but they also deserve to hear about this as well. Respected medical studies for years now have demonstrated that pot use, especially among teens, can trigger psychosis and increase the chance that a young person will develop violent behaviors. The Association of Mature American Citizens writes, a 2017 study identified marijuana as the single most common correlative variable in otherwise diverse populations and circumstances surrounding the association of violence and marijuana. Reported links exist to shooters in Parkland, El Paso, Dayton, Aurora, Colorado, Tucson, Chattanooga, Sacramento, and perhaps elsewhere. Now, a friend of the Dayton shooter, Connor Betts, told authorities that he was a gun owner and that he had done hard drugs with Betts, as well as marijuana and acid, 4 or 5 times a week from 2014 to 2015. Former New York Times reporter Alex Berenson has written extensively on this subject. A 2012 paper in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence examining a federal survey of more than 9,000 adolescents found that marijuana use was associated with a doubling of domestic violence in the U.S. Then there's this, the National Library of Medicine. Recent illicit and medical marijuana is of much higher potency and more likely to cause violent behavior. High-potency marijuana is a predictable and preventable cause of tragic, violent consequences. My question tonight is, why isn't there a national conversation happening right now about this? Why aren't reporters doing more to demand information on the potential drug use, in this case and others, both illicit drugs and prescription drugs? Antidepressants have long been known to be a problem for some young people. Or are we all just going to pretend that Joe confiscating all the 9mm or Beto running a gun buyback program is going to heal and protect our youth? Is that what we're hoping? You see, I'd rather operate in the real world. And that world is a lot more complicated than the anti-Second Amendment, anti-gun activists would suggest. Whenever there is a societal, cultural, familial, and spiritual deficit, bad things are going to rush in to fill it. Guns, gangs, drugs, then there will be harm to others or self-harm. And until we're honest about all of this, young people will continue to be pawns in a political game. And that's
Oh, that hurt to watch. Oh, that hurt to watch. Really? Marijuana. The dangers of marijuana. What is this? The DARE program from the 80s? Just say no to drugs? Really? I mean, forget fentanyl, forget meth, forget methamphetamines, forget angel dust, forget PCP, and all the other ones. Marijuana still is the gateway drug for mental instability. Funny, I thought that was meth. But then again, I'm not surprised. This is what the GOP does. And Fox might as well be, they are fake news because Fox is not a real news station, no matter how they cut the mustard. They're not. But they call themselves a news station because, hey, if you have a station that broadcasts to people who will watch it, mostly ultra conservative, you can call whatever you want. People believe it, even though Fox News does not have an acclimate or accolade or accomplishment to their name. But Laura Ingraham has decided that instead of actually focusing on the problem of gun violence, it's everything but. This is what the GOP does. They try to blame video games, which there was nothing out there to say that violent video games leads to more violence. If that's the case, every kid that's ever played Call of Duty or GTA, there would be more mass shootings if that was the case. Marijuana, again, has nothing. Marijuana has never caused a death. You can't overdose on marijuana. It's hard to overdose. You can overdose on meth. You can overdose on PCP. You can overdose on cocaine, crack cocaine. You can overdose on all of them and certainly die. But you cannot die overdosing on marijuana. But for the way the GOP tells it, you would swear up and down that yes, it is completely and totally possible. And yet it's funny for her to sit there and say, while the rest of them are disconnected. No, ma'am, you're disconnected. But you apparently have your head up your ass. Not surprising. Especially for the simple fact of the matter that, yes, further on in news, that as of right now, Chuck Schumer does have a bipartisanship looking into gun laws. And this is what they have so far. Like, for House Democrats, very simple what they're trying to pass. Raise the age from purchasing a semi-automatic centerfire rifle from 18 to 21 years old. Make it illegal to import, sell, manufacture, transfer, possess a large magazine capacity with some exceptions. Establish requirements regulating the storage of firearms in residential facilities. Build on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms regulatory ban on bump stocks attachment to guns that make rapid fire easier. Existing bump stocks are to be registered and sale possession by civilians of bump stock will be banned. And of course, current federal firearm regulations would apply to so-called ghost guns. That is about as simple as a bill gets. And yet those who are homosexuals or GOP will have an issue with that, especially on ghost guns. Ghost guns should definitely be, because ghost guns are not sold as guns. They're sold as actual packs. They're sold as individual build kits, which anybody can buy because they don't have serial numbers. So literally, especially with the videos on YouTube, you definitely can assemble a ghost gun and have a working firearm in less than a minute, in less than a half hour. But because there's no serial numbers, it's impossible to trace, which is what a lot of people out there, homosexual, have a problem with. They don't want their shit traced. I don't want to be on a national registry. The government doesn't even know how many guns I got. Yeah, we do. But the simple fact of the matter is, the guy who always says, I don't want the government knowing how many guns I got, it's his kid that's doing the shootings. It's always that mentality of, well, the government, it's always against the government, this, that, and the other, and the government's trying to take away my guns. Okay, let me stress this very, very heavily. In order for the government to take everybody's guns away, it would take well over 60 years. And that's an estimate. It would take, if the government started taking everybody's guns away at this point in time, it would take us nearly half a century. More than half a century for that to be accomplished. Get it out of your mind that the government will ever come for your guns. They're not. It'll never happen. You purchased them, you own them. But the fact that you guys hang on the Second Amendment, I'm like, well, are you a well-regulated militia? Are you facing a tyrannical and oppressive government? No? Doesn't apply to you. It doesn't apply to you. You have the right to defend your home. You're absolutely right. But the Second Amendment is just basically saying, hey, we don't want our government to become the British government / monarchy of old. If we get to that point, y'all can go against us. You can resist. however, by whatever means necessary. That's all the Second Amendment meant. But it amazes me so that you have folks out there that will swear up and down that this is the way. And I cannot, above all else, I will never understand it. And the fact that you have homosexuals out there that believe it, but apparently they make up a lot of the GOP. And as I said before, it's election season. It's midterm elections. We're all now 3 months. We're in June now, 3 months away for the midterm elections. Shit's about to get real. And unfortunately, which shit about getting real? Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene has blessed us again. And again, this is the GOP's way of thinking. And you shouldn't be surprised because guess what? She got nominated again, which tells you a lot about people in Georgia.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has no committee assignments after having them all stripped, and so she really doesn't do anything for her constituency. She certainly doesn't really write laws. She has very active social media pages, and she is always on them. Over the weekend, she had a live stream on her Facebook page, and it was the usual mix of bizarre and offensive conspiracy theories on everything from the monkeypox virus to the LGBTQ community. And while everything she said is, of course, bonkers, she managed a bit of a triple Lindy in this one with an assault on reality, science, and the English language all at once. The Peachtree Dish hamburger conspiracy theory.
You have to accept it, everyone. You have to accept the fact that the government totally wants to provide surveillance on every part of your life. They want to know when you're eating. They want to know if you're eating a cheeseburger, which is very bad because Bill Gates wants you to eat his fake meat that grows in a Peachtree dish. So you'll probably get a little zap inside your body and that's saying, no, don't eat a real cheeseburger. You need to eat the fake burger, the fake meat from Bill Gates. They probably also want to know when you go to the bathroom and if your bowel movements are on time or consistent. I mean, what else do these people want to know?
I don't know. 10%, I think it's a bit like she's doing it on purpose. I don't know. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who won her primary by more than 50 points last week, says that Bill Gates wants you to eat artificial meat that was grown in a, and I quote, Peachtree dish. Also, the government's going to probe your bowels through remote surveillance. It should go without saying, none of what she said is true. Gates is not working to build a global surveillance state to track when you use the bathroom and zap you for eating meat. But it is very funny that a sitting member of Congress doesn't know what a Petri dish is. Just like it was funny when Greene referred to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's, quote, gazpacho police instead of Gestapo. But again, behind the gas is like a genuinely dangerous trend in American politics. Conspiracy theory mania is devouring the Republican Party, like the basic set of facts that people understand about the world, the kind of stuff that used to just be relegated to anonymous message boards and Facebook memes.
I mean, he's absolutely right. Aside from, again, I had to mark myself safe on Facebook from Peachtree dishes. I would love, and I say this ever so nicely, I would love to figure out how Marjorie Taylor Greene has managed to Paris Hilton her way into a position where she does nothing. Keep in mind, she's been stripped of all her budget duties. She's not on any committees. She has no responsibilities, and she stays on social media all day. She's basically us, but with a government job that pays her $150,000 a year. I mean, I'll give her that. Congratulations for finessing your way into a job that you don't do nothing. And then on top of that, you got nominated to go back. I can only imagine that the people in her area are just as, I want to say dumb so badly, but let's just say as informed as she is when it comes to just the level of scrutiny. And again, I'll be honest with you guys, I've never understood the fascination with Bill Gates. I've never understood that. Bill Gates is out to chip us. Bill Gates is out to change the way we eat our food. Bill Gates is trying to infect Africa. I've never understood conspiracy theories. But at the same time, Chris Matthews is right. Conspiracy theories, just like the Tea Party movement, have ridiculed the GOP to what it is. an ultra conservative, highly conspiracy theorist, batshit crazy group. There's just no other way I could put that. Batshit crazy. But again, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Peachtree dishes. Just let that one sit with you for a while. But from the job side, guys, just really quickly before we get to our feel good segment, we did have the jobs report did come out that we did have 11.4 million jobs in 11.4 million jobs reported open at the end of April. However, as of today, it is down. I'm sorry, that's wrong. We went from 11.9 million to now 11.4 million. As the Labor Department did report that today, which means that, yes, we are still on a decline, but still, there are 11.4 million jobs open. Again, people are still quitting their jobs. Of course, back in April, was reported 4.4 million people have left their jobs, typically for higher pay. I have been saying this the entire time. Job numbers only look good when people want to take on the jobs. The problem that you're going to run into is that you now still have 11.4 million jobs open. And of course, being in Middle Tennessee, I see it all the way. We're hiring. But it's always interesting when they say they're hiring $9 an hour, $10 an hour, $15 for a manager. And yes, these are mostly service industry, fast food places, and your occasional, auto parts stores and retail and things of that nature, still paying less than $20 an hour. Those jobs are going to go unfulfilled. I don't know how many other ways I could say it. That job is going to go unfulfilled because nobody, above all else, wants to work a job, work themselves to death, and still don't make ends meet. Everything else is going up on your paycheck. Your rent's going up, your utilities are going up, and fuel is going up, but your paycheck is the same. And I've said it best. Employers are going to have a hard time trying to retain their employees because there's no such thing as corporate loyalty. I have been saying that since Jump Street. Corporations will cut you to save their bottom line and call it responsible. Meanwhile, you leave for a better job, and they'll call you heartless. I don't know why, because they will not give you the same consideration for saves their bottom line, increase their profits. So do what you need. Do what I always say best. Do for what you need to do for you is best, because corporations won't. If you died on the job, they would have a job open in your position posted faster than your obituary. That's just being honest. So I'm not surprised that we still have well over 11 million jobs still posted open because the pays haven't increased. If people started paying, because I'm saying the $15 an hour job just simply ain't going to work anymore. We need to be talking closer to $24 to $26 an hour as minimum wage. But again, that kind of goes back to Democrats because Joe Manchin didn't want to vote for it. Kristen Sinema didn't want to vote for it. And again, the Democrats are going to have a hard time this November to convince voters to still give them the majority to get things done, even though the GOP have done nothing. The GOP have sat there in silence about multiple mass shootings. The GOP have sat there in silence about people not being able to pay utilities. The GOP have sat there in silence, except when it comes to businesses and giving them tax breaks. It's amazing the GOP sits in silence against women's rights. It's amazing the GOP sits in silence when there needs to be police reform. The GOP is literally and figuratively telling you everything that they're about, and it's amazing that Democrats cannot win the quote-unquote election battle in some states, especially in states where particularly red states are doing poor in multiple ways of education, of income, of health, of literally every other graduation rates, mortality rates. They all do low. But the senators and representatives that come from those red states are some of the richest senators and well-off senators within Congress. Should tell you everything, again, you want to know. Democrats are going to have a harder time because, again, not a lot of wins in the column for them, but Republicans have goose eggs, and yet people still believe that they can do a better job. Republicans have an easier time convincing idiots than Democrats will have convincing their voters on the lack of promises they failed to deliver on. That's just being honest. But moving right along, guys. Remember when I sat there and said that studies were always a great thing except for those that don't benefit from them? Again, California. did the exact thing where they actually did a reparations report about 150 years of anti-Black harm. What they actually did was look into the moral and legal wrongs the American and California governments have inflicted upon their own Black citizens. Now, what does that mean? That means that they have looked at the impacts of generations of discrimination of Black Californians, of Black Americans in a more broad sense. And what did they find out? As the author wrote in the draft, and I quote, almost 150 years of active, conscientious federal, state, and local government action and neglect of duty have resulted in compounded harms that are unique to Black Americans. So, again, a study. Now, it does say one thing about this. Where does it go to from there? Because, again, with this study completed and actually showing that, yes, Black people have been at a financial and economic disadvantage while the Mayo were able to go forward and their generations have benefited, where our generations have suffered. So it does wonder what the state's going to do now. I mean, could they go ahead and actually begin the reparations? Hard to say. But now that you actually have the study to go by, it's irrefutable to sit there and say, like I've told many times, every Black person in America is due reparations. Because again, we are the descendants of those that came here involuntarily. And if a study proves it, then again, it's undisputed. America has already had a history of paying out reparations to different ethnic groups. So why should we be any different? That's all I'm saying. But that's really going to do it for our shows, guys. So we're going to go, sorry for our stories. So we're going to move on to our Feel Good News, Feel Good segment, because usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's hump day. We're just trying to make the Friday Eve, which is Thursday, on a very short week. Thanks to Memorial Day. And hopefully, guys, we're going to leave you out some good vibes and make you, give you a little bit of hope, because Lord knows we all need it right now. Imagine being an NICU preemie, and then you eventually come back and become an NICU doctor at the same place you were born from. This young man, who is now a doctor, is able to do just that.
My mother and my father would recount my birth story and how I was in the NICU, and my dad would say I was so small that I fit in the palm of his hand. Solidified my interest early on because I was introduced to this combined BSMD program in high school. Shadowing neonatologists at my local NICU during my summers in high school. That is what really piqued my interest and then solidified my interest in wanting to go into medicine. And right now I'm pursuing a residency in pediatrics because that was the one field in medicine that I was exposed to during the summer. And with my own personal background, I have developed a natural affinity towards the field.
And imagine, you really went from being a preemie to now being a doctor in the neonatal unit at the very same hospital that you were born in. I just thought that was and now we've come full circle. But I thought that was a pretty good story. And like I said, I always love the fact that when they say I was exposed to it, I got to see it, and therefore it kind of pushed me to it. Like I said before, a good education equals multiple opportunities. But that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this podcast. So I do thank everybody that liked, that watched, that shared, and let people know that was on. I certainly appreciate it. Still want to know your thoughts about everything that we covered today. Is even stuff that you may disagree with me about. That's fine. We're all about open discussion as long as you're not doing some Marjorie Taylor Greene dumb shit. Aside from that, we're good. But some shameless plug before I do get out of here, guys. I do want to shout out to guys over at Geek Salad for allowing me to share my podcast on their page, RAMG Present Geek Salad. Definitely check them out there. Also, shout out to my boy Vaughn, BigVZA on all socials, the Vaughn Westwood on Facebook. Definitely check him out as he definitely has some new shows coming down the pipe. Can't wait for him to get back in the routine. Of course, guys, for yours truly, my IG handle, BlackBox447. You can find me on Instagram. I usually post reviews of movies, video games, television shows, and gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, I am all about positivity, moving and motivating others, because we have had a rough couple of years, and we really need to come together and unify and actually try to break the generational curses and really help us heal and move forward. And I just hope I can actually do that, not only for myself and for others. Aside from that, guys, like I said before, really, again, be nice to people. We have, the reason I say it is because it takes zero energy to be nice. It takes everything you need to be a dick. And at this time, you don't know what battle another person's fighting. So just by simply being kind, saying hi, hello, or asking how they're doing, you might just do a lot more than just being polite. You actually just might save a life. That's all I'm saying. Of course, please wear a mask still, guys, if you can in crowded areas, because like I said, the coronavirus is not all the way gone yet. I know the news isn't reporting it as much as it used to, but like I said, we're not out of the woods yet. Please be prevalent. Please take care of yourselves so that way we can take care of others. And like I said, it's just all about, it's time to start turning that wheel, especially in the ways, not just from the ways of gun violence, but again, for mental health and all the things that the GOP talks about, which easily they can do by putting in a bill. So definitely call it your congressman. Bug them to hell. Because if they don't do it, then just remember, the midterms are coming. Their jobs depend on your vote. Please go out and vote. The last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here is all about staying informed. We're not trying to change minds or reinvent the wheel. We're simply giving you all the information to inform you and provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better in society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by basically doing decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Madam Vice President, like electing our first our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, by electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors. Again, history can be made when we finally decide to move forward and be progressive. What we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up at your paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians, but still the same old game? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all guys for watching. And like I said, if you're watching this on playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know a lot of your opinions on everything that we discussed tonight, guys. But aside from that, take care of yourselves and each other. And we will all get through this. Peace.